Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Simple Living High Thinking, where we unpack Tukaram Prabhu's Friday night Bhagavad Gita class. Hi, Tadeo. How are you?
Haribo Kim, I'm doing well, and you?
Good, good. We're in chapter 13. So, what kind of context would you like to set up for today?
I think quite similar to our last episode, chapter 13 is the first chapter of the rest of the Gita, and it introduces a philosophy. This last third of the Gita is really focusing on Gyan Yoga, so yoga of the intellect or yoga of knowledge. Even though, like we mentioned before, bhakti and karma is always present as well, but there is a bigger emphasis on knowledge in this chapter, which is characterized by Arjuna's questions, because Arjuna actually asked that question: what is knowledge and what is knowable? In other words, what is worthy of dedicating our knowledge to in order to know that? So Krishna, Arjuna actually asked those two questions and four other as well. And so it really characterizes how the entire of the last third of the Gita goes on, talking about knowledge, right? And so maybe we can briefly touch again on what the six questions are. So essentially, there are four questions that are related. One is the field and the knower of the field, where Chaitra and Chaitragya. So Chaitra is the field and Chaitragya is the knower of the field. But then the other two questions that are related to that, which we're going to touch on this class, is Prakti and Purusha, where Prakti is nature and Purusha is spirit. And so they are related in the sense that, and I'm already, spoiler alert, because this Prakti and Purusha is really where we evolved to in this last Friday's class, but I'm already connecting them. And so Prakti, which is nature, is related to Chaitra, which is our body. And then Chaitragya, who is us, the knower of the body, is related to Purusha, which is spirit. And I think in an obvious matter, right? Because Prakti is what our body, Chaitra, is made out of. So Pakti is matter, all of material nature. And our body is that matter, is made out of this material stuff. Whereas Chaitragya, us, the soul, we're the knower of the field, Chaitra, but what are we made out of? We are made out of spirit, and that is Purusha. Purusha is spirit, the spiritual contents, and we are a small instance of that. And so, in that sense, these four questions are related. And then the other two questions were, well, what is knowledge and what is worthy of knowing? In other words, the knowable. And then Krishna describes a process by which you can acquire knowledge. And I think it was interesting that Krishna did that, because Arjuna's question was actually, what is knowledge? But Krishna answers in a way that describes the process by which you can acquire knowledge, almost implying that that which you do in order to acquire knowledge is none different. So the process of acquiring knowledge and knowledge itself is almost none different from each other. And I really liked that it starts with humility, because if you are not humble, if you don't have humility as part of your inquisition of knowledge, in part as part of your journey towards knowledge, then what do you know? Because you already think you know everything, and there's not going to be much room for you to know much more than that which you think you already know. And whatever it is that we may think we know, it will fall short in in the grand scheme of life. Because and I'm going to take a little bit of a tangent here. Krishna differentiates himself when it comes down to Chaitragya, because he says, hey, Chaitragya is us, the knower of the field, Chaitra, and we know our own field, which is the body. But then Krishna says, I know all of the bodies, which then states that similar to the knowledge that we have access to in our bundle of our body, Krishna knows what we know because he's also in our body, and Krishna has the knowledge that we have of ourselves and of whatever other intelligence we may have been able to acquire. But I can think about people like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or somebody in China, let's say, and they have access to not only bigger knowledge than I have, more knowledge than I have, but categorically different as well, people from other cultures also. And so Krishna is in everybody's body, also aware of everybody's knowledge. So in that case, in that sense, Krishna is all knowledgeable. He has access to all of the knowledge. And we only have access to our limited knowledge. So in that sense, I'm saying our knowledge will remain limited, because no matter how much I know, Elon Musk knows more than I know. And then people from other countries, other cultures, they have different lifestyles. Like, for example, Eskimos, right, who lives in snow. Like, they have such different, categorically different type of knowledge than I do. Or people that live in jungles and how to survive in jungles. They have so much more knowledge. So knowledge is this thing that you can't really put in a container and say, the knowledge that I have access to in my body, it's all the knowledge there is. And because I know that, then I know everything. And I don't need to know anything else. And so the antidote to that is humility, to realize that the access, the knowledge that we have access to trapped in our bodies is very, very limited. And so I really like how Krishna describes knowledge as a process, of which step number one is humility, because we have to know that we have to have the knowledge to know that we don't know anything. And so that's how Krishna describes knowledge, because that was one of the 6 questions. And then Gyayam, so knowledge is Gyan, and Gyayam, which is the object of knowledge. What is the object that is most worthwhile knowing? And then Krishna equates that to Brahman. So it's, in one sense, it's very similar to Purusha, because it is that which is spiritual. Brahman is spiritual. And in this case, Purusha is spiritual as well. So Krishna is really pointing that, hey, yes, even in my examples here, I'm talking about Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and so on. They do have knowledge, but it's material knowledge, most of it. But Krishna is saying, yes, but with our capability to know, the object that is most worthy knowing is that which is spiritual, Brahman, something that has a spiritual nature, which really speaks to how deeply spiritual our philosophy is. Because no matter what is it, no matter what may be that that is of a material category, Krishna is saying that's not even worthy of knowing. And what's worthy of knowing is that which is spiritual. In the obvious sense, if we take a long-term view of our existence, no matter what it is that we may come to know in our material existence or acquire, we are going to lose it. So in that sense, it's not really worth, because we lose it. Like a retirement plan, we can divide our existence in pre-retirement and post-retirement. Well, you're still going to live post-retirement. In that sense, your retirement plan is really worthwhile, is really viable, because after you stop working, then you have access to that retirement plan funding, let's say. But what if somebody was to say, hey, work really hard in your younger age for this retirement plan that you're going to benefit from after you retire, but then you never really retire. Let's say you pass away before you get to retire. then what is the value of that retirement plan if you're never going to get to enjoy it? Then you worked really hard for it, but then unfortunately, let's say you pass away before you retire, then that retirement plan is useless because you never really took any benefit from it. So in a similar sense, is anything that is material we can't take with us. We can work hard for anything that we may accumulate in our material existence, but after death, which is kind of like the retirement analogy here that I'm bringing, after death, everything is just useless now. You don't get to keep anything. There's no more value in any of that knowledge of any of the material subjects that you may have acquired. And so Krishna is saying, okay, the thing that is worthy knowing is that which is eternal, spiritual, and that is Brahman. And so I think this is kind of like a longer than expected context to where we are right now, Kim. What are your thoughts so far?
No, these are big questions that Arjuna asked. So I appreciate the detail that you went into. I liked how you pointed out how Krishna didn't just give, oh, this is knowledge, but he told us how to acquire knowledge. It's such an important distinction. In our tradition, we talk about the four regs, no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, all that. But what it doesn't talk about in the four regs is humility. And it's so important when you want to learn something to come with the attitude of, I don't know anything. And Tukaram Prabhu, if you develop a relationship with him, he stresses the importance of this, to have humility and respect for your gurus and for your teachers. And otherwise, things just aren't going in if you are defiant or have a chip on your shoulder or think you know something or want to correct your teacher or something like that. So I think it's such a brilliant way for Krishna to teach this of, well, don't worry about knowledge right now. This is how you get it. I really like that.
I happen to work in the medical field with eye doctors, and I think they're brilliant when it comes down to the eyes. And the eyes is such an intricate organ of our body. It does, it breaks down light and then it projects in our brain, and then you see stuff. And we depend so much in our sense of vision to navigate the world. And things come in through our eyes upside down, and then our brain puts it, in the right order again, so you can perceive colors. So there's so many intricate processes that are going on in our eyes. And I think these eye doctors that I work with, they're quite intelligent and knowledgeable. But when it comes down to the heart, what do they know? When it comes down to our bones or ligaments or the brain, except the optic nerve, the other parts of the brain, or our digestive system or our cardiovascular system, what do they know? They have no knowledge of those things. And so even if we take our body as an example of an object of knowledge, it takes doctors a tremendous amount of time and effort to know just one aspect of our body. In my case, I'm intimately familiar with the eye. And it is bewildering how many intricate processes are going on in the eyes. But there's so much more to the body than just the eyes. And so if an eye doctor walks around and say, oh, I know the entire body, like they would sound foolish and ignorant. Like you don't know, you know a little bit of the body, which is the eyes, but not anything else. And then you start asking these doctors who seem so knowledgeable about the eye, but you ask them something about the cardiovascular system. It's like, they will have some kind of understanding due to their training in school and so on, but it's not in depth at all. And they know they don't know, right? And that's just our body. And then we see there's so many specialties in healthcare, right? In the medical field, there's so many different specialties that you have to focus just on, like your bones or, digestive systems, your lungs. And so you take so many years to know just that one aspect of the body, and the body is quite insignificant compared to all there is in our universe. If we were now to add in all the laws of physics, electromagnetism, and all the other intricate laws, gravity, etc. There's so much more to know. So even if you are such an exalted doctor, you don't even know the whole body. And much to speak of all the other laws that governs our universe. So even if you are a doctor, what do you really know? We don't really know much. And so humility is that enabling force towards knowledge. You know, if you developed an attitude, I do not know much, and there's so much more to know, then and only then you can actually have knowledge. So that is certainly the most valuable step, number one. So I like this point so much, Kim, that I wanted to again expand on the point that you already expanded on about humility. So
Yeah, thank you. Can't stress it enough. It's
right,
kind of the key to everything. So,
right. So then text 15 is really where we are starting in this recording, in this podcast. That's where we left off last time, right?
yes.
And so text 15 through text 19, they are quite related. It is Krishna essentially describing himself as the super soul and also being the knower of our own body, but different from us who have access to knowledge of our own body. Krishna knows all the bodies. Krishna is present in everybody's heart. We, the living spiritual entity, we are known to be located in the heart center, in the center of our hearts. Like physically speaking, that's where we would be. And Krishna says, I am also in the heart as the super soul. And in that sense, he knows all of the bodies. However, Krishna is very different from us. Even though we are similar in qualities because we are both spiritual, Krishna is the source of all spiritual and material energies, where we are just one small aspect of that spiritual energy, known as the soul. And so I'm going to read these texts quickly. They do have a trend, and then we can talk about that. So text 15, where we are starting today, it says, the super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the mode of nature, and at the same time, he is the master of all modes of material nature. Text 16, the supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. Although the supersoul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of all living entities, he is to be understood that he it is to be understood that he devours and develops all. He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. He is knowledge, he is the object of knowledge, he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. And then 19, thus the field of activities, so the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this truly and thus attain to my nature. So, and that's the end of text 19. So, what these verses have in common is this quite esoteric understanding how Krishna is inside of everything, but at the same time outside of everything. He seems to be spread everywhere, because if he is in everybody's heart, then Krishna is in my heart and then is in everyone's else's heart as well. So therefore, there's a part of Krishna inside of me, there's a part of Krishna inside of you, and in that way, Krishna is divided in many, many, many parts. But then the statement comes, but he's actually situated as one and he's not spread. So how to understand these seemingly contradictory statements that the Gita is presenting us right now? And the way to really wrap our minds around it is to know that Krishna is similar to us in the sense that he's also spiritual and we are spiritual, but he's not exactly just like us. He is not subject to the laws of material nature. He's above them. He creates them. The source of the laws of material nature is Krishna himself. So for example, a contradiction would be if I am inside, I cannot be outside. Well, that's applicable to us, but it's not applicable to Krishna. He can be inside and outside at the same time. Now, that one may wonder, well, how is that possible? Well, when we step into the arena of God, it is worthwhile knowing that God is translogical, which is different than being illogical. So one may ask a question, well, can God create a rock that is so heavy that he cannot pick up himself? Well, if he cannot create such a rock, then he cannot do anything. God is known as being able to do whatever he likes. But if he is not able to create a rock that is so heavy that he can't pick it up, then he cannot do that. Or if he can do that and then he can't pick it up, then he doesn't have the power to pick it up. So that's like an illogical proposition. Can God create a square circle? Well, by definition, a square is not a circle and a circle is not a square. So we can't blame God for not being all powerful, for not being able to create a square circle, because that is illogical. But God's position is such that he is translogical. That means he transcends logic without being illogical. And so we are bound by laws that would prevent us from being in two places at the same time. But it is not illogical that a being like God could be in two different places at the same time, because even qubits, which are quantum particles, are scientifically proven to be found in two places at the same time. And so that's something that quantum physics can prove. And so why wouldn't God, who is actually the creator of quantum physics as well, not be able to be in my heart and in your heart at the same time, and yet not be divided, be situated as one? And so God is translogical. So I think the main insight that these texts are giving us is to understand that, yes, we have some similarities with God, but God is still a very different being than we are, in the sense that he transcends all of material nature and he transcends all of the logic that we are bound to. And these verses, they are giving us an insight into what that would look like. What are your thoughts on that, Kim?
Yeah, it's so hard to wrap your brain around these ideas of trans logic and God being beyond logic. But I really like the point that you made about, even though God is translogical, he never loses the logic. So and that's one of the main things that appealed to me when I first learned about this tradition was, no question is gone unanswered. And there's always a logical reason, and there's no blind faith that's really pushed on people. And I really like that about a tradition, something that's solid, well thought out. And yeah, it speaks to logic, and that speaks to me.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It was very captivating to me as well to see so much logical concepts being presented in a cohesive way, in a translogical way, but never illogical.
Mhm.
And it was refreshing to be able to study spiritual subjects from a platform of logic and knowledge. Not only from that platform, because ultimately our main platform is love, and that's a sentiment, that's a feeling, but to know him is to love him. So the more we know of him in a logical way and translogical way, the more we can love him. And so it was very refreshing to be able to have access to both, rather than just a sentimental understand. Well, a sentimental faith on what God might be. So that was very refreshing to me as well.
Yeah, yeah. That's I like that point. Yeah, and this tradition, we always talk about an intimate relationship with Krishna. And that idea of an intimate relationship, what does that look like? And what does that mean? Well, obviously you'd want to know as much as you can about someone, but also that an intimate relationship is possible, that it's attainable. And to do that, view everything that we talked about today, humility. And I liked these texts that you just read because it speaks to the idea of grace, that God, we're not going to completely understand trans logic and not understand everything that God is, but by God's grace and mercy, we can start to at least piece some things together to build a relationship.
Since we are in the humility train wagon here, I think I want to expand on that one more time in a logical way. So, what do you know? So, let's consider this personal relationship that you just brought up. We do depend on God's mercy in order to transcend the material existence in which we find ourselves today, which is quite bounded by sufferings. And so it is something that we also want to do. We want to transcend and go back to our original spiritual existence. And we are very dependent on God's mercy in order to be able to attain that. Otherwise, it would be the classical error of trying to build a stairway to heaven. Well, no matter how much you try, you're not going to get there on your own. You do need a transcendental help that only God can give us. Now, if we are puffed up thinking that, no, I am able to build my stairway to heaven and I'm going to try, then from God's position, why would he help us? Because we are foolishly believing that we can do it ourselves. And that is our desire. And guess what Krishna will not do? He'll never compromise our free will. And if our free will is being used to try to build our stairway to heaven ourselves, Krishna is not gonna take that away from us because it is our foolish desire. It is what we're here for. And so Krishna is not gonna impede that effort of ours because it is the impetus of that is a false pride, false sense of pride, like I can do it myself. And then that will shut the door on God's grace, on God's mercy. And it is only through a humble state of mind that God will be inclined to help us. Not to say that God would not otherwise be inclined to help us. He always wants to help us, but not at the expense of compromising our free will. And so we have to have the humility to recognize that we need God's grace and God's help, Krishna's help. And only in that case, we're going to then be open to receive his mercy. And in that way only, we can actually transcend. Otherwise, we're stuck here thinking that we know everything.
Yeah. I remember this was a while back. I can't remember which chapter, but talking about how Krishna gives us our devotion, gives us our intelligence. And that when I first learned about that, that was so interesting to me because it just speaks to how we are not the doer at all.
Right.
We can do our best and take these steps towards Krishna, but we just get into this mindset that everything depends on us and what we do here or there. And but when we read text like that, when I read text like that, then it's such an obvious statement, like, no, you don't do anything, you don't control anything. So yeah, it's very encouraging too.
Right. I think that's a great segue into the next set of verses, which I believe is worthwhile reading them together because they too provide a trend. So that's text 20 through 24. And text 21 has a very interesting point about what you just mentioned, whether we are the doer or not, like what it is that are we doing something or we are not doing something, right? So let me read them. Text 20, material nature in the living entities should be understood to be beginningless. Their transformations in the modes of matter are products of material nature. 21, nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effect, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. So we'll get back to this. 22, the living entity in material nature does follow the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. Yet, in this body, there is another transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the super soul. What we've been discussing, how Krishna is in our heart as the super soul. And 24, one who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interactions of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. So let's jump right into it. Text 21 is saying nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects. Okay, cool. That's a quite scientific term, right? There's a cause and an effect, and that's nature. I think it's a very, very scientific statement. Nobody would have an issue with that. Then the second verse, the second part of this verse say, whereas the living entities, which is to say us, the soul, is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. So Kim, according to what you said, we are not the doer. We are not doing anything. That was one of your realizations. Now, Krishna is now here saying that we are the cause of sufferings and enjoyments. Sounds to me like we are doing something that causes our sufferings and enjoyments. So I think you are right and Krishna is wrong. How do you reconcile that?
That's a very good point. I am completely in a corner. I painted myself into a corner.
I mean, I know you, and I think that what you say is true, but Krishna is saying something different. So can you please explain to me how is it that Krishna is wrong and you're right?
Well, to get myself out of the corner, there's a balance of our free will and our choices and what Krishna intervenes with. So if with our free will, if we make a choice to murder people and become alcoholics, we will have certain effects from that. And in that way, Krishna allowed us to have our free choice. And then, effects from those choices come into play. Whereas if we use our free will choice to learn more about Krishna, to be devoted, live a clean lifestyle so that we can be more spiritual and learn more, then Krishna has set up the system, so to speak, such that we would be encouraged and advance on that path. That's the best I can do to get out of my corner.
And you also mentioned earlier when we were discussing the interesting analogy about when we are in a dream, right? You want to expand on that a little bit more?
Oh, yeah. I thought Tukaram Prabhu gave such a nice example in class where he said, okay, so the Vedic worldview is that you're a pure soul. We agree with that. But yet we're in this world making all these ignorant choices. And which is true? Are we a pure soul or are we an ignorant being doing ignorant things? And so he said, if you dream you're being chased by a tiger, are you actually being chased by a tiger? Well, no. But your experience is such that you are being chased by a tiger. I mean, you might, even while dreaming, you might have adrenaline pumping through your veins, your heart rate might be up a little bit. And so are both simultaneously true? And that would be yes. But then we have the choice to decide what to focus on. And the same thing, like if you're an addict, are you still a pure soul? Yes. Are you an addict? Yes. Now, which do you choose to identify with? And so once again, that free will choice is a very powerful choice in what we do choose to identify with, the real reality of our lives and our existence as souls. So I thought that was such a great example.
Right. And I think we can substantiate this analogy and stretch it even more. And it will exemplify how is it possible that we are not the doers, and yet Krishna is saying that we are the cause of pains and pleasures, right? Sufferings and happiness in the material world. So let's continue to run with the sleeping analogy. Let's say that our free will is only comprised of whether or not I want to lay in bed and go to sleep. So let's say that hypothetically speaking, the only thing I can do with my free will is to choose whether I want to lay down and fall asleep or whether I want to remain awake. And that's the only two things that I can do with my free will. If that was to be the case, and I choose with my God-given free will to lay down and go to sleep, or let's say, and I also end up having a dream, right? I get into the REM cycle of my sleep and I'm having a dream. All right. Now I'm being chased by a tiger. Well, that's going to be sufferings because who wants to be chased by a tiger? And like you mentioned, your cardiovascular system is going to go nuts and you're going to get all kinds of hormones being produced in your brain due to fear of being chased by a tiger. And you are actually having that experience. Nobody can deny that. It is false. You're not actually being chased by a tiger, but you are actually having that experience. They're both simultaneously true. And what is it that you are doing? You're not doing anything. You're just laying there. So you're literally just laying there and not doing anything. In fact, don't hold me for this, but I did hear a neurologist speaking, and I think I was able to assimilate the concept, but it was new to me. Maybe it's common knowledge to everybody because what do I know? I don't know much. But doing REM, when we are having a dream, rapid eye movement, that's what REM stands for. That's the cycle, that's the phase in our sleep cycle where our body actually rebuilds itself and heals itself. What I learned that was quite interesting that this neurologist lady was explaining is that there's something else that is required for that healing process to take place, which is that whatever place the body is rebuilding and healing, that place must be paralyzed. In other words, there can be no movement. Let's say your elbow is being rebuilt and fixed while you're sleeping. You cannot bend your elbow. It has to be still. There cannot be any movement. Similar is the effect of a cast when you come out of surgery and doctors put a cast on you on that particular part of your body. Well, the only goal of the cast is to prevent movement, because if that part, if it's a joint or whatever, is not moving, then it helps with the healing process. Similarly, when your body is asleep during REM and it is being rebuilt, that part must be paralyzed so that it can be rebuilt properly. And the brain actually releases some hormones that actually paralyzes your body. Now, why did I take this tangent? Because you're literally not doing anything to the extent that they're paralyzed. You're not moving. You're not doing anything. So in that sense, you're not the doer. You're not doing anything, but yet you are experiencing that suffering of fear of being chased by a tiger in that dream. So what is it that you did? Well, you chose to go to sleep. So in that sense, you are the cause of you now having this dream. So in that sense, you caused the situation of being asleep to the point that you get to a dream-like states. But in that illusory experience of being chased by a tiger, you're not doing anything. In fact, you're literally paralyzed. That's the extent to which you're not doing anything. You're paralyzed. You're just laying there, not even moving. And in that sense, you're not doing anything. So there is this distance between you and the causes and effects of material nature. That tiger chasing you is the cause and effect of matter, of material nature. But you, the soul, you just laying there paralyzed, not doing anything. So in that way, it is possible to reconcile the idea that we are not the doers while we are experiencing something like a dream, but at the same time, we were the cause of being in a dream-like state because we chose to fall asleep. And that was our free will. And now to just finish up that analogy is that this is not a what if type of mental exercise. In fact, our free will is only comprised of that one choice to either serve Krishna or serve ourselves. That is our own choice that we have. And so if we choose to serve Krishna in this analogy, it will be synonymous with remaining awake. But if we choose to serve ourselves, our own senses, in this analogy, it will be synonymous with going to sleep in a dream-like state where things are happening by themselves. That's material nature, cause and effects. And you're not doing anything in there. It's just material nature that is carrying out its thing, it's doing its thing, causes and effects of which you have no control. And in that sense, you're not doing anything. But you were the cause of the choice of falling asleep to begin with. But now what you're going to be experiencing is literally all illusion. That's the Sanskrit word Maya. That tiger chasing you in a dream is nothing but illusion. But you are nevertheless going to experience all the sufferings that are connected to the actual reality of being chased by a tiger. But we all know it's nothing but a dream. Similar, very similar to our actual position here. We are dreaming that we are in these bodies and that we are these bodies and mind and that we have all these pains and pleasures. Maybe we were actually chased by a tiger in some kind of jungle. Maybe we were hiking and then we saw a mountain lion, but like in an awakened state. But in relationship to the soul, that is nothing but a dream because we are not the body and we don't even belong here. And so that is a dream-like state in which we don't do anything, but we are the cause of our sufferings and pleasures because we chose to fall asleep.
Yeah, that's a good point. The aspect of us choosing to fall asleep. Yeah. Yeah, because we can so easily get into this idea that we're victimized in this world. Oh, my life is so full of suffering, but it's not my fault. I had nothing to do with it. And that would indicate a very chaotic worldview and a very unjust God. So yeah, this, the dream state is such a good analogy because it feels so real, but ultimately it's not.
It captures so many ways in which we find ourselves trapped here, because it is also said that all of material reality is nothing but a perverted version of the spiritual reality, where in the spiritual reality, things are actually true. Things are absolute. And in here, things are relative. Well, in the dreamlike states, if we're going that level down, right? So if we are dreaming, then the reality is when we are awake, and then the illusion is when we are sleeping. Well, in your dream, you may have a dream of a friend of yours. Well, that friend actually exists when you wake up, but in that dream is like a weird version of your friend, right? That friend is like in a place where the friend would have never been, or it looks, that friend of yours looks different, but yeah, it is that friend of yours. But if you wake up and you look at your friend, the friend actually exists. But in the dream, it's just a perverted illusion of that actual reality. And similarly is our experience here. Everything we see and everything that we come in touch with our senses here is an illusion, but they actually have existence, absolute existence in the material, in the spiritual plane.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then Krishna ends, well, text 24, which is where we're ending, not Krishna ending. So that text says something quite interesting. I think is worthy of meditating as a last topic for our recording today. Krishna says, one who understands. That's why this section of the Gita, which starts with chapter 13, is characterized by knowledge and philosophy and Jnana Yoga, right? Because Krishna is now here saying, one who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of material nature is sure to attain liberation. And he will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. So is it really like one can listen to our podcast and be liberated? Because hopefully, Kim, you and I did a good job at explaining these concepts and somebody understood it. And then now they can go back to Godhead. So mission accomplished, right? So one who understands, like, what does that mean? Like, if I understood these topics, now I'm going to attain liberation. Like, what is Krishna really trying to say here? To me, is that subtle that only we can do in the first person, that subtle experience of our conscious awareness of being in our bodies, right? So let's get into that. If I understand that I am not this body is part of material nature, and I'm something completely different, right? Because our body feels so personal and private to us. Like we know our body in such an intimacy that it really feels like it is us and it belongs to us. Nothing is more intimate to ourselves than our own body and minds. But what if this body and mind is nothing but matter, the same matter that comprises the entire universe, stardust, or the sun and the moon, or the water in the ocean? Materially speaking, scientifically speaking, that is what our bodies are made out of. And there's this big separation between our body, which is nothing but matter, and us, the living entity inside of the body. So I think this philosophy, this way of understanding, which is what Krishna is saying here, if you truly understand this, and I emphasize truly here, if we truly understand that, then we can realize I'm not the body. So that's what is being, the proposition here is that understand that there's matter, which is what your body is. And you are not that, you're something completely different. Now, let's scrutinize that proposition. We are being cursed out in public, in front of people that we like and honor, let's say, like friends and family. And some person walks in the room and start defaming us and dishonoring us. How does that make you feel? Right? And then you're thinking, well, how dare you be cursing at me? Well, who is me here? It is nothing but the body and the mind that they're addressing. Because like we just discussed, the soul, the living entity, is the non-doer. The soul is not doing anything. The soul is just sitting there as an observer of pains and pleasures. So that person is really cursing at a specific piece of matter, which is your body and your mind and your intelligence, which in Vedic philosophy, mind, intelligence, and false ego is also matter, is known as subtle matter, but is matter nevertheless, and part of the matter that makes up the entire universe. And so that interaction of somebody cursing at you, or somebody praising you, or somebody cutting you off in traffic, all that is going on due to the interactions of the modes, material modes of matter, of which we have nothing to do with. So to the extent that we get super happy when somebody praises us and super bent out of shape when somebody defame us and dishonor us, to that extent, we do not understand this truth. And the more that we understand this truth, the more we will come to realize we have nothing to do with this world. And whether somebody's praising us or defaming us, like Krishna has said so many times throughout the Bhagavad Gita, pains and pleasures, honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, all these dualities is nothing but matter interacting with itself, with cause and effect, which is very scientific. And we are the non-doers. We are that soul laying there in a paralyzed state, having all these experiences as if it was true, but it's nothing but a dream. And so if we truly understand that point, then we can actually live our lives in the way Krishna is proposing here, where pains and pleasures, happiness and distress, honor and dishonor, summer or winter, promotion or demotion, men or women, animals, let's say cows and dogs, where the dogs and the cats, we love them and we bring them inside of our homes. But the cows and the chickens and the pigs, we slaughter them and eat them. Why is that? Right? We see that these things are dualities, and we see beyond the matter of the cow body versus the dog body. We see that there's a living entity inside of both bodies. So if we truly understand the division between matter and spirit, we can live our lives in a perfect way, and in that sense attain liberation.
Yeah. Yeah. And what comes to mind as you're speaking is just how everything's so temporary. And, I'm considering buying a house right now. And I would like this to be the last house that I buy. And I don't have children. So who am I going to leave the house to? And why am I so worried about, oh, it needs to be a good investment? And I just ultimately just want a nice place where I can retire eventually. So yeah, and the idea of leaving this house behind, whatever I get, it's really started to hit me more so than any other house I've owned. Of wow, you really can't take it with you, and you can make it as nice as you want, and you're going to be leaving it all behind. And who knows? You can't control how the next person is going to take care of the house, and even me wanting to, let's say, leave it to the temple. It's like I can't control how the temple will manage the house and what they use, if they even keep the house, and all these things that we need to just release control of, because it's so temporary being here. And once I pass on, I'm not going to care. So all this energy about making my material life so nice and perfect, it just seems rather silly.
That's a very interesting analogy. The substance that the house is made out of is the exact same substance that our bodies are made out of. They're matter. So both the house and the body are made out of the same thing. And death is that thing that takes us away from all of this. And you can take neither one of them with you, not your body, not the house, because they're both of the same substance. That's matter, and that's separate. And at death, that's when things get separated. We take the spirit soul out of the body, and you can leave the body inside of the house, but you're going to go out. And in that sense, it won't matter. Neither the body nor the house, which are both made out of the same substance, are going to be separated from you, the spirit soul, at the time of death. And that's really, I think, what Krishna is getting at here. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature and the living entity, namely how they are categorically two different things, can truly attain liberation. Because then yes, I'm here temporarily, it's a dream-like state. But yeah, the house and the body are in one category, I'm in another. I'm different. And I cannot take the house with me just as much as I cannot take my body with me, and I'm going to be forced to die. So that's I think that's a strong argument for us to end with, because we are all going to be forced to die and we cannot take the house with us. So if we truly understand that, and that we are eternal beings, so that we do not die, it is the matter that remains here, but we go elsewhere. If we truly understand that, then yes, we'll never come back here, because we will have attained the Gyan Yoga that this, not only the section of the Gita, but this chapter itself is trying to teach us. And that is knowledge worthy of knowing, that which is spiritual, who is us, not anything that is matter, material, which is all the means by which you're going to be able to acquire your house. That's cool. It's going to serve you some purpose, but knowledge of who you are beyond the house is worthy of knowing. That's Gyan.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, kind of similar to that is this idea of, okay, we don't need to return here. We won't return here. And I think about, I have no problem leaving a house behind, leaving material things behind. Sometimes what gets me is family members who are not yet embracing Krishna consciousness and thinking about leaving them behind. Sometimes that gets to me a little bit about, well, maybe I should just come back one more time and swoop them all with me. But how do you navigate that?
Krishna says in other literatures as well, some of the Vedas, other, not in the Gita, but it is stated that the spiritual progress that you make, the love and devotion for Krishna that you are able to attain, that 7 generations before you and 7 generations after you all will attain the same results. And so they can all benefit from the progress you have made. So let's break that down in a simpler analogy. Let's say you take the effort to become a doctor, and you become a very prominent doctor, make a lot of money. And then now you buy this house and that many, many other houses, right? Well, it is natural that the people that are really close to you, your family members, let's say, they're going to benefit from your material success. They are going to have access to all the money you made because you're going to be sharing with them. Maybe you're going to buy them a house and they're going to live comfortably there. But what did they do to deserve that? Nothing. You did it. You're the one who became a doctor. You're the one who put in all the work. Similarly is our spiritual progress. But because spiritual things are much more powerful than material things, even the people that came before us can benefit from our spiritual progress. And the people that are currently here with us and the people that are yet to be part of our lineage, let's say, they all benefit from the spiritual progress that you have been able to make. So even though it seems that you are leaving them behind and that they're not really realizing the same beneficial power and values of spiritual life that you have realized, yet they are getting the benefits nevertheless. So it is the best thing that we can do, even if they're not directly following our steps, accepting our humble proposition to embrace spiritual life, even though they may not be doing that, simply by the fact that they're related to us and that we have made this spiritual progress. The laws of nature is such that the spiritual laws are such that these souls that are related to us, 7 before and 7 after, they will all partake in the progress that you have made. And so if we truly want to help our loved ones, I mean, everybody, right? But let's say people that are directly connected to us by generations, it is still the best way to do that. It is still for us ourselves to cultivate love for Krishna.
That makes me feel much better. That was a good analogy with the doctor. And I could see, you know, Krishna's, there's just no way I can comprehend how that works, the 7 generations up and 7 generations down, and how that could manifest. I could imagine it though, in subtle ways. The next life that they come into being set up with just a little bit better circumstance, perhaps, that would encourage them or set the stage for them to embrace Krishna consciousness at some point. So yeah, that makes me feel much better.
Let's come up with a more degraded, not in a condescending way, but in relationship to spiritual topics, would be a few steps below analogy. Let's say we're going to a club. And let's say we're going to a club in downtown LA, not downtown, let's say LA. And let's say I am some kind of rapper, superstar rapper, right? So I'm a famous rapper. And I have my entourage with me. It's natural, they all do. And let's say that 7 of these people of my entourage arrive at the club before me. I'm yet to arrive. And then there will be 7 other entourage members of me that will come after me, right? Well, if they were not related to me in any way and they get to the club, especially if the famous rapper is going to be there, right? It's going to be really difficult for you to get into that club because that famous rapper is going to be there and you're not going to get in. And so, however, if you get there and you say, hey, you know, I'm with that rapper, I'm his brother, I'm his sister, I'm his whatever, I'm like his friend, I'm his close friend, and I can somehow prove it that that is the case, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get in the club. Only because you know me, only because you're related to me somehow or another. I don't even have to be there yet. But because you're related to me, my power, my energy, my progress, what I have done is in this very material way also spelled out on you. It's also part of you because you are related to me. You're getting the benefits of my fame. And you get into the club simply because you're related to me. And let's say now I get, and that's before I got there. Now let's say I get there, and obviously I get in because I'm the rapper. I'm the one who did all this stuff. So I get in. Now, after I got in, if some 7 people come afterwards and they say, hey, I am that rapper's brother. He's already inside, but I'm his brother. And I can prove that. If that's the case, guess what's going to happen? You're also going to get in. So 7 people that came before, 7 people that came after, simply because they know me, simply because they are related to me, they're all getting in the club. And so let's make the club the spiritual world, and let's make the rapper me and you. And so we can put in all this spiritual progress, and people that are related to us, they all get the benefit as well. I think it's part of Krishna's causeless mercy. Like, why wouldn't Krishna be so merciful? He says, hey, you related to this person and this person was such a great person. Yeah, sure. You get a pass too. Why not? It speaks to Krishna's, how good he is, how kind and how nice he is. I think that would be the case. Now, there is a story in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is not the literature, right? It is said that Srimad Bhagavatam is the master's degree, and Bhagavad Gita that we're discussing here now is your bachelor's degree. So there's a story in Srimad Bhagavatam where there is a very prominent devotee, very, very, very powerful, very devoted person, but whose parents were not into spiritual life at all. In fact, they were like eating meat and not abstaining, not following some basic principles of spiritual life. And this very exalted devotee has a guru. So the guru of the devotee is even higher level, right? He's even more evolved, spiritually speaking, because he's the teacher of this devotee that we're talking about here in this story. And so one time, the guru of the devotee comes to meet the parents of the devotee. And again, the parents were, let's say, not as evolved, right? They were doing all the things that spiritual people would not do. And in that case, they would be looked upon as being very degraded. When the guru sees the parents of the devotee. The guru himself goes down and bows down to the parents and worship their feet, the parents' feet. And then everybody's like not understanding, like, oh, why is that guru doing that? Because these people are so not worthy of his worship. In fact, they should be worshiping him. Well, what is the point? And then the guru is questioned, like, why are you doing that? He says, well, because they are the parents of this devotee. So they are none different. They also deserve all the grace, all the benefits, because they are the parents. That's his mother and that's his father right there. So then the guru can see this truth that we're speaking here and worships the parents, even though the parents have never done anything to deserve spiritual glorification. Nevertheless, that spiritual exalted being, the guru, understands it and worships the parents, even though they are like meat eaters, let's say. So that's exemplified even in the stories of Srimad Bhagavatam as well.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I like that.
So the best thing we can do is to love Krishna ourselves, and then everybody wins.
Yeah. And I like that we don't have to worry about it, that Krishna handles all of it.
Krishna handles, Krishna got our back. So all we have to do is love him. It's such an easy thing, we such, he's the best friend. He's the most worthy object of knowledge. He's the most loving, powerful, and knowledgeable person there is, and capable, and our best friends. All we have to do is love him. And then we wake up from our dreamlike states where all the other people that were in the dream with us, they also wake up. 7 people before and 7 people later.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you to Deo. And I look forward to probably completing chapter 13 next week, perhaps. We'll see. But
awesome.
But yeah, we'll talk to you again next week.
Haribol. Looking forward to it.